Looks like we're headed out into the internet. We'll welcome our friends to this program. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We will get started here momentarily with our guest, Christopher Oill. And it's good to see you all again. Hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving, turkey time. And you had your fill of yummy food, as is the custom here in our country. The day where we eat the most we possibly can. Also, not a bad time of the year for those of us who are piano technicians. We usually get a little extra work during the holidays. People want their pianos tuned up, I suppose, and the family comes around. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, stuff like that. So it's usually a good time of year for everyone. Get your bank account a little fatter for some Christmas presents. All right, we're going to get started here with the program in a minute. If you're seeing us out there on Facebook or YouTube, stay tuned. We'll try to get a link in the chat there for you if you want to join us directly on Zoom. Other than that, you're welcome to stay out on the stream and just watch us from the social. But if you enter here, you have a chance to participate in the conversation a little bit more, put a comment in, maybe even come on camera or audio if it's appropriate. Okay, let me introduce the program, give you guys some context. So I want to say welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world and music world. Could entail musicians, makers of other instruments, manufacturers, rebuilders, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at a craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to this program, Radio Hour, for just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as all the archival recordings of well over 200 episodes in our member area. You can join using the link bit.ly/joinptrh. That's bit.ly/joinptrh. And then, of course, make sure to check out the podcast version of the program. It's audio only, but it's still quite fascinating. You can listen in the car while you're working in the shop, working out, doing the dishes as folks do when they're listening to podcasts. We've got quite a following in the podcast world with top rankings in various countries in the performing arts category in iTunes. And we're very proud to see that growth since we started releasing this as a podcast. Also, check out our Substack, where you can get behind the scenes, as it were, look at our private member area content beyond the radio hour. That's our master class, which we might talk about voicing, regulation, history, piano construction, design, all kinds of cool stuff that you might not have access to in your day-to-day educational opportunities. Also, remember to follow us on our socials. We've got LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, pretty much all the popular ones. You can find us there. We'll give you updates. We'll keep you abreast of what's going on. Okay. Given our intro and our context here, it's time to introduce today's guest. His name is Christopher Oill, with 2 L's, just for fun. The extra L is for lots of loving or something like that. I don't know. Today,
I do know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I figured.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the word. He's a dynamic pianist, composer, and educator who is transforming the way we think about piano music. He brings together the elegance of classical training with the vibrant world of anime and video game soundtracks, creating a truly unique artistic voice. As a creative mind behind Piano Universe, Chris is dedicated to inspiring the next generation of musicians to explore and innovate. His published works with Faber Piano Adventures and FJH Music Company underscores passion for music education and his commitment to crafting engaging imaginative compositions. With advanced degrees in piano performance and pedagogy, Chris masterfully bridges traditional techniques with modern creativity. Whether he's arranging beloved soundtracks or performing captivating original pieces, Chris invites us all to experience piano music in a fresh, exciting way. Christopher, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour.
Thank you. Yeah, excited to be here. Have a chat.
Lovely to have you. Privileged to have the opportunity to spend some time with you today. Um, I can't help but be distracted here. I don't know if it's relevant. We didn't talk about this. What is this poster behind you? Is that
Oh, yeah.
musical in some way? What is that? What is
So
that?
I've got, along with the whole Piano Universe theme. So Piano Universe, yes, is my piano teaching studio, and I've been developing you could say, an achievement system for my students because the types of students that I tend to teach are, you could say, non-traditional. They like to learn, like you said, anime stuff, and they like to learn things by ear, and they like to watch videos on YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So more traditional achievement systems that you might see like festivals for don't really work for my type of student. And so I created my own system, which has 10 different levels, and each level is named after, it's called the exploration ranking system. And uh, each level, the title basically represents how much the student has explored. And so you'll see, I don't know if you can see the titles up there, but like it starts
Yeah,
off with,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, so
Hello.
yeah, yeah, so the bottom one is like home. So they've explored their home, the area of their home. And then it goes outward and outward, upward to city and state and country and continent and et cetera, et cetera. And so the top being the universe, which is basically saying like you've explored as much as you can. You're go off, be your own musician.
All right. I'm guessing that's a rare achievement, or is that an
Yeah,
actual point that a lot of people get to? You kind of go through the program, and you're now at universe stage. In our program, like how common is it for somebody to get to the universe stage? Is it sort of a natural part of the progression, or is that like the rare pinnacle of achievement that hardly anybody gets to?
yeah, totally rare. You can see there's you can see there's one little blue thing on the chart up there.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's one student who's up on the top there, getting close. Most of them, I imagine, get to like the fifth or sixth level by the time they graduate and go to school and stuff like that. That's sort of the more commonplace achievement.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. I like that. Yeah, it is. You know, as I'm like an entrepreneur with a team. I also train people in piano technology. I don't teach music right now, but I think about it, having learned music myself, jazz and a bit of classical as well. Um, it is it is quite useful to be intentional about that kind of a system that you have to let people know where they're at and where they're going and where they can go. So that's very interesting. It also reminds me of two things. I'll just mention them just for fun. One is animal behavior. So I actually studied animal behavior as part of my PhD in neuroscience. Studied birds, and so you would read, about the way that animals, you know, have various behaviors. Different species have different behaviors, and they've been cataloged and categorized and such. I mean, simple example like a dog. The dogs they have like a play bow, right, where they go down the head towards the ground and they put their butt in the ear and they wag their tail and they want to play, right? So they've done studies with mostly rats and mice, but of a very specific behavioral pattern of exploration. They have a home base, right? If you put them in a novel room and they go out a little bit, they go around the edges of the room first and they kind of go back and forth around the edges until they hit the other side of the room. Once they've seen that side, then they're kind of circling around the room, and then they slowly get into like the center of the room. But it's sort of just like a natural progression of exploration to kind of start at your home, feel comfortable, and then just expand, maybe return home, kind of go out a little bit further, return to your home base.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think first off, I'd like to say, and I think it's really funny. I don't think it was your intention, but now I'm thinking of my students as animals that I'm training. It's
yeah, yeah. So it's interesting.
but no, very good points. And I should say that this mindset of exploration is really how I came to in my it was my own experience as a musician, as an artist, you can say. Um, Yes, I did have some traditional training, formal training, but I would say a majority that was those were nice foundations, but a majority of what I really understand and use and teach and and write and play, all of that now is things that I learned through exploring.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll mention the other thing again. It's sort of like tangentially relevant, but maybe it'll get you somewhere creative. Like hopefully, it's a positive thing that you think about your students as animals that you're training. I don't know exactly. The second thing it makes me think of is the loving kindness meditation. Have you ever done that?
What meditation?
It's called loving kindness meditation, or I think it's called the metta meditation. Anyways, it's a meditation you can do, and you sort of like you imagine someone who you love or care about, to kind of engender that feeling of love. And then what you do is you expand that feeling that to your room, to your city, to your state, to your country, to the globe, to the universe. Um, and again, it's a kind of natural progression that
Hmm.
is a very human type of thing, and I love this sort of expansive feeling that you get as you move forward, right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to your beginning, your home base. How did you get started in music, and what do you think about your foundation laid the groundwork for the career that you've been building?
So you know what's funny, and in the context, I think it's important to say in the context of this audience is I grew up, I would say, in the age of when internet and that kind of technology was really starting to blossom, and so I had to learn a lot of the basics, you can say. So when I was in, I want to say like middle school or something, YouTube was like first starting to become a thing, and and there was audio recording software too, like oh, what's it called? Not Ableton. Anyways, there was some Audacity. That's what it's called. So
Audacity, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Very,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like a free tool, but it's pretty sophisticated. You can do a lot with it.
yeah, and that was for me like so exciting to at that time to see something where I could actually make music happen and record it. I was such a nerd. I recorded like multiple all the parts to barbershop and worked with tweaked with all of that to make it sound nice and pretty. But anyway, so I grew up in a like a semi musical household. My mom was a chorus teacher, and then that kind of was the segue for me. And I had a lot of beginnings in jazz and and I as far as like composing goes, I really did all of that on my own. I did have formal training with piano and with singing, and then I went as you said, I went to school for piano and for voice, for music education and piano performance. But while I was there, I did actually participate in I was in like a popular a cappella ensemble, which I did arrangements for, and then I did actually I took a after I graduated from there, I had somewhat of a hiatus before I went back to school, which was when I feel like I really came found you could say found myself in terms of where I am now. Because during that time I started to teach at like music and arts, the chain. Um, yeah, I started teaching at a place like music and arts, and there was another place I taught at, and at those places I started to they basically give you whatever students they don't care what your background is, whatever it is. It's like, here's a student, you teach them. They could be a wide array of interests, wide array of skills, whatever it is, you got to teach them, you got to figure it out. And so um, in order to keep my job, I had to really be creative and basically cater to all of these really different types of students. And it grew to be really interesting for me. And one of the things that I started doing during that time was writing more for students, more pieces for students, arranging pieces for students too. And so that really just caught my interest. I traveled to Michigan after, and I started working for the Piano Adventures, Faber Piano Adventures, the big lesson book company, and it did some arranging work for them. All of that time spent in Audacity finally paid off. And I started making some audio arrangements, MIDI arrangements for them, and a couple other things too. And that got me even further into the idea of writing music for students, and then went to school here in Arizona for piano pedagogy, and now I have my own studio, and it's a blast. I write, I teach, I perform, do all that fun stuff.
Right. I'm curious how that gig with, you said Faber, came about. Do you see like an ad posted, or was it a friend of a friend, or how does that happen? I'm always interested. We've had a couple people who've gotten into like music publishing and educational publishing, and it doesn't seem like something you just kind of wake up with. Well, some people kind of have fallen into it in interesting ways. So I'm just curious how that happened for you.
I would say an absurd an absurd amount of persistence and a little bit of luck. So,
So you actually wanted to get into that domain. It wasn't just like, I think we had another guest, and I forget their name, but it was kind of like, I don't know, maybe one of their mentors or like a friend or something. Hey, we need somebody to do this arrangement or whatever. And they're like, okay, sure. And then all of a sudden, then they started publishing again for like a existing sort of brand or whatever you want to call it, publisher. And then that led to them maybe producing some of their own work.
oh yeah, I mean,
But this is something you actually pursued. You're like, I want to get into this domain. Yeah.
yeah, so there's definitely, I've had many of those types of experiences where, I got an opportunity through a friend or through a colleague. This one was a little bit different. I'm always on the lookout for opportunities. I'm looking left and right for them. And so that's why I say it's a little bit of luck, but it's also a little bit of persistence and just a constant. Anyway, so my wife and I moved. She got, you could say, like an internship in Michigan, and me being a piano teacher, I was thinking, well, okay, I could just move with her and then build up a new studio there, and it'll be fine. And I could freelance, I could find some stuff there, and just so happens that in Ann Arbor, where we moved, was Piano Adventures. So that was a little bit of luck there. And then as far as getting work with them, um, I, at that time when I was jobless, I was really um, extra eager to get a job, and so, so basically, I just walked into their what's it called, their main office there, right there,
Sure.
and
Headquarters, maybe.
headquarters, yeah, their teaching studio, and I just asked. I said, "Hey, do you got anything here for me?" And they were like, "Yeah, maybe, let's give us a resume, the whole shtick." Um, and so I took that little bit of kindness, and I really pushed a little bit more with it. So I came, rather than just, okay, here's my resume. I came in with like, I was like, all right, here's some recordings I made. Here's some pieces I made. Here's some ideas for where I can fit in your company. Blah blah blah. So I was, a little bit annoying, but it paid off. And so,
I found in all my, I've been in a lot of domains. I've been in the world of science and, technology and music and, I mean, and some of the most annoying people are some of the most successful ones. I just, yeah, yeah, it's because they're persistent, and I heard this one time and I found it, it stuck with me. I think it came from Ramit Sethi, and the idea was a person's success is correlated with the number of awkward conversations they're willing to have.
yeah,
But that's really great. I love that. And I'm, to be honest, I often, if somebody is looking for a gig, right, this is what I tell them exactly kind of how you laid it out. If you show up to any workplace, whether they have a job opening or not, and you're just enthusiastic to work there, like you have some affinity for it that's natural as opposed to manufactured, which a lot of people are doing when they're applying to a job. Oh, all right, well, how can I frame what I do so this will look good to them, right? If somebody shows up and they're just naturally interested, how could you not hire in a person? It's kind of rare, right? So
Yeah.
good on you for realizing that.
Yeah, and a lot of my experiences up to that point helped also. All of that exploration that I did with the composing and the technology and et cetera, et cetera. They definitely liked that because they didn't have a whole lot of that at the company already. And well, there was one person who was doing all of that this technology side of the production work, and I think he was super relieved to have somebody else help.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, that's also another thing too. I think people don't like younger people don't realize that they bring to the table a familiarity with the newer forms of whatever things are, right? So they often come into a domain thinking, oh, I'm inexperienced. Everybody else here knows more than me. Oftentimes they know more than everybody else about something, right? And then your value is quite high. So that's wonderful.
I think there's also a lot to be said about in just my experience too. Something more recent on related is the letting yourself rely on someone else. And I bring it up because AI, ChatGPT, those kinds of things. I don't know about you, but I've been finding myself using ChatGPT way more often recently, just for getting simple tasks done. But super helpful.
Yeah. I use ChatGPT to make coffee for me in the morning. Just kidding. But it does a lot of stuff. You're right. Like, yes, I'm definitely uh, I wouldn't call myself a super user because I'm sure there's people who are doing way more than I am. But indeed, there's a lot that people aren't aware of that you can utilize it for. Write the lyrics to a song, or like help me, you know, start writing a symphony or something. Right? You could have ChatGPT guide you through that type of thing. Um, very cool. Uh, you've got something behind you that we're all probably interested in besides your ranking system. You have an acoustic piano, and
Yes.
that's a rare and wonderful thing in this world. And that's
Mm.
part of our shared passion here. We're at our roots at this program. We're piano technician, piano nerds.
Mm.
Um, well, tell me why you have an acoustic piano here. Clearly, you've moved around a bit. I don't know
Yeah.
if you're still in Michigan or not, but it means something to get a piano in your home. Tell me about that process, why you have it. Is it something in the family that just moved with you, or did you have to go out and procure that? What's been your relationship to acoustic pianos?
Well, we've been on and off, like talk.
Got your ups and downs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly the downs are when things are out of tune.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
Like
actually,
any good pet, you have to take care of it and feed it if you want it to love you.
yeah, right. And this one he bit me a lot when he was young, so
Okay. Okay. He's feisty.
it was
All right.
feisty. Yeah, when I first got this one, I got it pretty new, and it just was having problem after problem after problem, and like the keys were sticking, things were going out of tune really quickly, which I know that going out of tune I think is pretty normal for a new piano, but the sticky keys was a problem. Is something to do. I'm not a technician, but I do know there's something like the rods or something was swelling up in there, and there was some felt that was kind of bad,
Yeah.
and so my technician came in, just replaced a whole bunch of stuff, and it really turned out nice. But now it's
What kind
working.
of piano is it?
It's a Weber,
Okay.
or Weber if you choose to pronounce,
Sure.
German.
And did you purchased it new, or was it like, yeah.
Yeah, it was fairly new. And before this one, I I was just using, I got a digital keyboard over there, and when I grew up, I had an upright piano. I think it was a Schumann, if I remember right, um, something along those lines. And it served its purpose, but it was janky to 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 say to say the least. But this one, I got it because there's such a big difference. I can't teach on, well, I definitely can't teach on a electric piano the things that I want to teach, and I can't teach as well on an upright piano. So I really wanted to get at least a baby grand piano, for so there's benefits to each one of them for sure. But this one in particular I got because you get essentially a much deeper, richer sound out of a grand piano, and part of the reason is simply just because it keeps, from a business perspective, it keeps students, parents wanting to come back,
Mm.
because they even though they are not trained to be able to describe the differences, they can hear the differences. They can feel the differences. They know what a good quality piano sounds like, and
Mhm.
what it looks like.
Yeah.
Um, part of that is just student retention. Part of that is, as a performer, there are some really nuanced, expressive details that really can only be done with a very reactive piano, a piano that, you could say, molds to your personality. Like this one, the reason I chose this one is because you could say the volume, is really evenly distributed across the whole entire piano. Um, that was one reason. I liked the brighter timbre. I liked the heavier touch on the keys, um, because then when I go to a piano that has a little bit of a lighter touch, it's super easy. So,
Like
and then
working out.
what's that?
Like working out.
Yeah, it's
Like
like
your home
working out.
gym.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I liked all of that. I tend to be a little bit more of a dramatic player, and so, if any keys are, um, not giving me for lack of a better word, the full power that I want,
Sure.
then I'm kind of disappointed. So this one's kind of like it's a horse. It listens to me. It works with me. And
Now
then
that you've teamed it, that you've broken it in.
yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Uh, would you, I mean, we talked about maybe you playing something. Is now a good time? You
Sure.
interested in, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear you play. Let's hear the piano. Granted, I'm sure you didn't just get it tuned or anything, or maybe you did, but if you did, thanks.
I've actually been getting some reminder emails that I do need to get it tuned. So
All right,
I
hop,
pop I,
chop, chop. Let's get
yeah,
you,
yeah. I know. But so I chose a piece to play today for, specifically for your crowd, and also the time of year. It's holiday season. So this is I wrote a book for, you could say, early intermediate level pianists, and it's called Christmas Ish, and it's a bunch of either Christmas arrangements, holiday, I should say, holiday arrangements and original holiday tunes that have a little bit of quirkiness and humor to them. And
perfect.
yeah, and this one is called "Hark, My Piano's Out of Tune."
Oh, well, that's perfect.
There you go.
It does need a tune, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
So,
That's fun.
you know, I particularly enjoy writing some pieces like this that have a little bit of humor to them. Um, and
And I'm
then
sure kids love it.
oh, absolutely, yeah. So they love to be the all of my students. If I ever try to be any kind of serious with them, they're gone next week. So
Yeah. Yeah, especially these days. Yeah, man, I mean, kids, oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm at the 7-year-old, but it's there's so much in the way of entertaining and educational things. You know what I mean? Like he can watch a hour's worth of programming where it's a cartoon, but he learns about animals and he's coming back telling me about species of cats I never even heard of, right?
mhm.
And so they kind of kids these days are kind of demanding entertainment at every moment,
Yeah, no, but
whether you like it
really,
or not. Well, that's great. Um, and then is that's published as well, right?
hmm yeah.
Published
So
work.
that one is published with like you said before, I have done some arrangements for the Piano Adventures, but I also have published original compositions in some other spots too. So FJH Music Company, they they're I think they're mostly known for their big band kind of stuff, that their orchestral mm, pieces, but they do publish piano pieces as well, and I've got a lot of stuff published with them for solo piano for lots of different levels. I have some stuff for more advanced levels in there too, and then on my website I do have compositions too. Some things also that are even more difficult, because mostly FJH publishes pedagogical stuff, and so if I ever want to publish something that is really meant more for me as a performer, or that doesn't quite fit the styles that they're looking for, I'll put it on my website. So that one was from a book called Christmas Ish Music.
And and the way it works with the publisher, I'm sure there's different ways it can work. Does your name get attached to the compositions? Is it there in the byline, or does it become their composition that they're marketing as theirs, and then you just get compensated for licensing it to them? How does it actually work?
Um, so for Piano Adventures, it is Piano Adventures. I'm more of a contributor to the arrangement. And so my name really doesn't go on there. It's more of just I went in. I got a special mention in there for some stuff, but in FJH I am like the author. So yes, my name does get goes on
Goes on the
the
book or
book
something.
itself. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And even though it still does go through several hands before, like the it goes through my main editor, and then it goes through, like, it passes through. They have these. I don't even know what the job title is called, but it's basically like there are two secondary editors that check for things in the score and make sure it's looking um, on par with the rest of the content. And then after that, it goes to the the there's people in the company who test it with their own students, and it goes back. It's just kind of like it goes through a lot of hands before it gets on the market. So some of these publications through FJH can take a couple of years before they finally make it onto the before they make it into publication.
That's fascinating. Um, this is a good jumping off point to talk about just how you're thinking about your career as a creative, musical person, right? So clearly you're ambitious, right? And you are enthusiastic, right? So as evidenced by the way that you approached Faber, you're doing some YouTube, you're doing some instruction locally. Um, how do you think about your sort of career as a musician? It's really interesting to think about it these days, because people are designing their own way there. Are you looking for certain parts of it to be your outlet for creative expression versus you don't need to make money with it versus this is the money part of things, versus it's all combined versus you're at this point and it's not where you're going to be. You're going to be headed someplace else in the future. How are you thinking about all this, if at all? You don't have to be, but I'm curious.
Hmm. Well, it's definitely for me evolved into music is my it's my life, it's my career, it's everything I do. And so I will say though, however, I've recently dove into the world of data analytics, which is really cool, and and it does coincide really nicely with what I'm doing already. And so I almost want to say that that being considered, and also my history, I think I'm a little bit more interested in the business side of music. It to not just because like, hey, I want to make money, but it's just fascinating to me to kind of take a look at, hey, how do people react to my ideas and my music? I just kind of like to see um, the effect that it has on people. And then for me personally too, like I said, I like performing too. And when I perform, I like to, I, contrary to the classical world where these performers are going up on stage and it's all, hey, look at me and look at what I can do. I grew up more with um, playing in bands and Backstreet Boys and and so for me it's like when I go to perform even on solo piano, I want to make it as much of a let's all make music together kind of experience as possible. And um, I don't know if that kind of get. I know I'm kind of like skirting around. I have a lot of answers
No,
to
but
this
I'm curious
question.
can you expand upon that? So how does that manifest itself in terms of let's all make music together? How often are you playing sort of in front of people? Are you doing concerts every couple of months, every week, every day? Where are you doing them? What kind of styles? You mentioned being in bands. I don't know if you're performing in bands right now.
Mhm.
What kind of performances are you doing and how are they getting executed?
Well, I'll admit that I haven't been performing as much lately, but when I was performing more regularly, I'd say, I was performing a couple times a year. And I gave some solo recitals. I've performed at like some senior citizen homes. Those were the most fun for me because they just, they tend to like everything you play. And so, and then,
Also a great place to tune a piano. I was
oh yeah.
I went and tuned the piano where my mother is right now, and
Hmm.
oh man, was that thing way out, and just the bang for your buck, right? In terms of the appreciation you can get for getting an instrument in tune and playing it a little bit. It's a pretty high leverage opportunity for sure.
Oh, I'm sure you get tons of experience tuning those pianos.
Indeed, indeed. Well, not as much as it should be, right? Because sometimes that gets neglected. Oh, the piano's there. Somebody comes in and play it. They can't find someone, whatever. So maybe less
the
often than they should be. But when it does happen, I think it's a very rewarding experience for sure.
I actually wonder, just out of curiosity, if a piano gets which piano goes out of shape more quickly? A piano that is played more often, or a piano that is not played as often?
That's a good question. Um, Most likely it's the one that gets played more that goes out of tune more quickly. Now, there's several variables at play here, though. So I could see a piano that doesn't get played as much, potentially going out of tune more quickly, but the reason would not be uh, all variables equal. It would be probably because it's not getting played much, it's not being cared for appropriately, right? So maybe they're not paying attention to, oh, we put it right next to this old water heater system where the heat fluctuates up and down, and then it just goes way out very quickly. So it wouldn't be all variables being equal, aside from playing, the more playing you're going to do, the quicker it's going to go out of tune. However, you do have those correlated variables that go along with not playing it that often that could lead to it going out of tune more quickly as well.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah, I didn't even think about that. The situations the unplayed piano tends to be in.
Yeah, yeah, there's plenty of those.
Even if my AC goes out for like a day, then my piano, I'm like, clenching my fists, like, please stay.
Yeah.
What
Have you
was
been?
your original question here? I got off on a tangent.
Oh, I don't remember exactly
Oh
there,
well, whatever,
but
it's fine.
yeah. Have you considered a humidity control system for your piano?
You know what? I have, but I haven't gotten it yet. Right now, I just, we do keep the house at a very regular temperature. I've convinced I have my piano is in my home, uh, for context, and I've convinced my wife to allow me to control the air conditioning for that purpose.
That's a tough. That's pretty impressive that you've made that convincing.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
But
I,
mhm.
yeah, I mean, just to move on to other topics. So we mentioned a little bit about the type of students that you work with and like, you know, compositional elements. I don't know if this is happening. Like, are you creating compositions for um, various resources like a video game or a film or anything like that, or is that more just kind of like the style that your students like? How how
Mm.
does how does this integrate? We mentioned and video games, anime, and things like that. I know that I've ran into these types of piano fans, where they play something and they're like, well, that's from that movie or that's from
Mm-hmm.
that video game, and it really gives somebody something to latch onto. Um, and it's different than what would it have been like, 50 years ago. Just to make it very clear, those things weren't around, or the cross cultural um, leakage hadn't happened. So explain like this sort of culture around that and your involvement in it as well, from a composition like perspective.
Right, and yeah, even not even just 50 years ago, but 10 years ago, right? Just how would you say this? The culture of music, at least in the United States, right, has just evolved so much, and so and I personally like to be wherever it is going. And so, you know, 10 years ago or whatever, I don't recall anime being as popular as it is today. And and so like when I first started teaching, none of my students were learning anime. I barely knew what anime was. And now it's like every student I teach wants to do either something from a video game or wants to learn a piece from a video game or wants to learn a piece from an anime or from a movie or something. And so, as far as style is concerned, a lot of the exposure and experience I get with those kinds of music happens to be through my students, um, and mostly on piano. Now, just because it's mostly on piano and it's mostly with my students doesn't mean that it's all on piano and all with my students. But there's also, some of my students are they don't even study with piano that much with me. They study more like mm, music composition and audio production. Like I've got I think I've got two or three students who, um, basically the end goal for what they want to do is make music for video games. And so a lot of what I work on with them is, there's, do you know Logic? Yeah,
Music production software.
yeah, music production software. So I work with them in programs like Logic or Ableton or um, um, uh, what's another
The
one of them?
Cubase or something, is that still around?
Those stuff, right? And
Fruity Loop.
what's that?
Fruity Loop. Garage band, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And so with some of them, I have to do the free programs like GarageBand, and yeah, I work with them. I'm personally most comfortable with Logic, but I a lot of the concepts transfer very nicely to these other programs, and so I can at least give them instruct. I can tell them, hey, you need to do this. I don't know how to do this in this program, but you need to do it, and yeah, and then we'll work on these kinds of styles of music and orchestrating them and all that kind of stuff. As far as so that's with my students, as me as a performer and me as a creator myself. Um, I used to work. I used to produce more songs on my own, and like I wrote songs and I published them, and um, I do have an album out on iTunes and Spotify that I don't tell anyone about because it was made 15 years ago when
The
I was
archives.
first. It's in the archive, yeah. And so but it's I've got stuff like that out there, and that was all in, you could say, popular styles. um but as far as I'm just always interested. I think, to more directly answer your question, I'm always interested in whatever is the hot trend in music, um, because I have like the attention span of a squirrel, and I need to be, I need you to. I constantly need someone to hang something shiny in front of me, and in wherever music is going, and music is going, it's evolving very quickly. Is that shiny object for me? I'd like to follow it.
How do you keep up with what's next? Do you listen to music podcasts? Do you sort of find what's trending, what's new thing on Spotify, or yeah, how do you keep up with what's next in music?
Well, actually, a few different ways. One, my students, the students are a lot of the younger ones in particular. Every day a student comes in, I'm like, I've literally never heard of this before, but that's cool. And then, so that's one way to get into it. Um, I guess if you're, like a piano technician, like you probably learn a lot from your clients too. But anyways, so there's that. I do actually, I my so my older brother has this hobby where he goes on Spotify and makes a bunch of playlists every month, and I actually caught on to that hobby this year, and I've been doing that every month, and it's really exciting to just try and basically hack the system of Spotify and try and make it suggest new things to you.
Hmm.
And so I'll be on Spotify and trying to find new music, and if I ever hear something that stands out as kind of like peculiar, something that is in a style or genre that I've never really heard before, I'll add it to a playlist. That's one of my forms of research. And then I'm also very involved with piano teacher communities. There's Facebook groups. There are podcasts that I listen to, and you learn a lot by just being social.
Do you ever check out Switched on Pop?
I've heard of that. Yeah. Remind me what it is, though.
It's cool. It's I'm surprised because I feel like it's relatively popular, but it's kind of very nerdy perspective. So they talk about popular music. It's a podcast, but the guys who host it are like music theory nerds.
Uh,
So they'll talk about, whatever, the minor third trend or something and how it's the defining, they'll talk about some interval and how it's the defining, sound of a generation or whatever.
mm-hmm.
Um, but it's a good show. They do a good job of presenting things.
There's a YouTube channel that's similar to that too. It's like 8-bit something. I wonder. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but it's like 8-bit music theory. Let me just. I'm looking it up really quick because it's
Yeah,
now
for sure.
I'm 8-bit music theory. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Yep, that's exactly what it's called. 8-bit music theory, and not with pop music, but it is with video game music. They'll
Oh, okay.
and, yep, this guy dives deep into the music theory. And it's super fun and gets it's a fun way to I mean, the thing it gets you to realize too, if you aren't as familiar with video game, I mean, I'm a video game fanatic. I play so many video games. I'm not afraid to admit it. And one of the things that I know and that you can learn through something like that, like 8-bit music theory, the video channel, is that video game music is really intricate. If I would I would almost argue that video game music is today's classical music. It is the next step, um, just because of the intricacy and
Hmm.
the and the you know how all the different styles really have come together to make it.
Right. Yeah. Advanced, video game production houses, are analogous to uh, film production companies of a decade or two ago. Top
Mm-hmm.
notch, millions of dollars invested, technology employed. And I think this came up on the podcast recently as well, maybe a couple of months ago with a guest who also, I believe, he was creating video game music. Um, you also have interesting, there's all these interesting facets that people are just realizing are part of music today, though weren't part of music of the past, and will be more of music of the future. And that is, the video game composition has the potential to change based on situation and location, right? So it's 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 almost like a choose your own adventure as well type of experience, right? And you know, we were talking on that episode as well about just the potential for that to happen in life, or even virtual reality or whatever. You're walking around and there's a soundtrack being created if you want, right in your headphones, to just what you're doing. Where are you? Did you walk out into the cold, and did you come home and the fire is burning or whatever? There's
That
a
would be pretty
potential now
cool.
to create music on demand. AI is going to be playing a role in this as well, for whatever the situation is and change in the moment. It's fascinating stuff.
Oh, that would be really exciting.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's already possible. It's just a matter of implementing it even more deeply. I want to just touch upon, we have about just a couple of minutes left, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll wrap up. We'll make sure people know where to follow you. But I want to go a little bit back. You were talking about teaching students through, like audio editing software and interfaces. How exactly does that come about, right? Do they show up wanting piano lessons, and then you're just kind of going along with
Mm-hmm.
you know that clip, and then they but let's make some compositions, let's use this software, and do you have regular lessons with them, like on a weekly basis, where you just sort of continue to work with them? Is it part of a piano? How does that first of all show up in your sort of domain of pedagogy, and also how does it evolve and get incorporated?
So I am first off, they most of my students do come once a week. It's like that's a norm that I haven't broken out of yet. I don't know if I want to, um, and I haven't found a reason to break out of the once a week um, culture yet. But in terms of how do they find me, why do they come to me, how do we get into that? So I have a website, right, and I also have a reputation as on the website, and my reputation. I've become I've even though I'm capable of doing things like classical music, classical competitions, um, all the things that all these other teachers do, I've sort of developed this reputation and leaned into the idea of being the teacher that takes the students that nobody else knows what to do with. so and so a lot of these students, either one, were studying with someone else, and it got to a point where they just weren't happy because they couldn't do everything they could, and then that teacher's like, hey, I know a guy. And or they'll be, if they're looking for their first teacher, they'll be looking at tons of websites, and then they'll come across mine and see, oh, this guy does a lot of weird things. Let's see what he's got. And so it's not necessarily that it starts in audio production. It really starts with this idea of here's this teacher who can do non traditional things. And then from there, um, once they get to my studio, rather than handing them a book and saying, let's start here, I say, what do you want to do today? What interests you? What do you need to work on? What's your goals? What do you like? What do you like? What kind of music? Those kinds of things. So it becomes more about leading, discovering what my student is about, rather than laying them on the yellow brick road.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that's wonderful. And I mean, to be honest, it's like probably the way that you're teaching now, you know, it will probably evolve be the way you teach as time goes on. But 50
Mm-hmm.
years from now, everybody will be teaching like that, and they'll go, "Oh, that's the old way that we used to teach." And we'll just go and learn, audio software. You do this. Now it's this, right? So I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like even you're completely familiar with the traditional ways of teaching. Clearly, you're writing books on it and writing compositions to instruct. And even though you have those traditional resources at hand and you're well versed in them, you're teaching to today's student. You're the student of today. Nobody else knows what to do with them because they're not creative enough to teach a creative student. I mean, we're not going to diss them, but
Well,
that's the way that I'm seeing it. That's what I'm seeing it. So it's wonderful that you're able to fill that niche, because there's a place for that traditional education, but like you said,
mm-hmm.
these are probably very creative people who have a lot of potential. Glad there's someone who can help rise to the challenge of supporting them. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Good note to wrap up on. So yeah, give us just if there's anything you want to leave us with as far as closing thoughts, or just even where's the best place to follow you and keep up, or calls to action. What do you got for us? And then I'll do the outro and we'll sign off.
Yeah. So I mean, my name again, Chris Oill, and my website is oillpianouniverse.com. That's oil with two L's, Oall. And on there, you can learn about me. You can find some compositions, and you can contact me if you have any questions.
Sounds good. All right, I'll walk us out here. We have reached the end of another musical journey at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to Christopher for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Tech Vision's Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction for piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that joined us today by signing up for your session individually, make your life more fulfilling and subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, just $16 a month. You get the recording of today's session in a member area, automatic registration for each week's news session. Sign up at bit.ly/joinptrh, bit.ly/joinptrh. Make sure to check out the podcast, pianotechradio.com, the blog on Substack, and all of our socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. And with that, we'll sign off. Christopher, if you want, after we sign off, hop back up on the Zoom link. We'll just do a quick wrap up. But beyond that, we'll see everyone else next week. Thank you.